The ship was dying, and Jake Morrison knew it. Red lights flashed across every panel in the cockpit as the research vessel spun through the collapsing wormhole. He grabbed the controls and tried to stabilize, but the instruments showed nothing but chaos. The experimental jump drive had torn a hole in space, and now that hole was pulling him. Somewhere impossible. Metal screamed as the hole compressed. Jake strapped himself into the emergency pod and hit the eject button. The pod shot free just as the main ship exploded into fragments. He tumbled through purple clouds and strange lightning before crashing hard into soil that glowed faintly blue. When Jake opened his eyes, the sky was wrong. 2 moons hung overhead, and the stars formed patterns he had never seen. He climbed out of the smoking pod and checked his supplies. The plasma cutter still worked. His oxygen converter was damaged, but the atmosphere read as breathable. He took off his helmet and smelled flowers mixed with something like burning copper. The forest around him held trees with silver bark and leaves that chimed like bells in the wind. Jake activated his wrist computer and tried to scan for signals, but found nothing. He was alone on an alien world with no way home. Then he heard the roar. It came from beyond the trees, shook the ground beneath his feet. Jake grabbed the plasma cutter and ran toward the sound because years of training told him that running away from unknown threats in unknown territory was how people died, lost and alone. Better to see what he faced? He burst through the silver trees into a clearing and stopped dead. A creature the size of a cargo shuttle fought against things made of living shadow. The creature had scales of deep red and gold, wings that could block out the sun. Fire poured from its jaws in waves of heat that made Jake stumble backward. A dragon. He was watching a real dragon fight. On the dragon's back sat a woman in armor that seemed woven from moonlight itself. Her hair was white as snow and her ears came to sharp points. She held a sword that crackled with blue energy and slashed at the shadow creatures that swarmed around them. The shadows had no real form, but when they touched the dragon, they left marks like acid burns. The woman was skilled, but there were too many enemies. Jake saw one of the shadow things climbing up behind her while she fought 3 others in front. His body moved before his mind caught up. He raised the plasma cutter and fired. The beam sliced through the shadow creature, and it dissolved with a sound like breaking glass. The woman on the dragon spun toward him with wide eyes. They were violet like amethyst stones. She shouted something in a language Jake did not understand, but her meaning was clear when she pointed at more shadows emerging from the trees. He fired again and again. The plasma cutter burned through the shadow creatures far more effectively than her sword. The dragon roared and unleashed another wave of flame. Between Jake's technology and their magic, the clearing filled with dissolving shadows until finally silence fell. The woman dismounted from her dragon in one smooth motion and approached Jake with her sword still raised. She spoke again in that musical language. Jake held up his hands. I do not understand. I am human. From Earth. My ship crashed here. The woman tilted her head and touched a crystal pendant at her throat. When she spoke again, the words came out strange but understandable. You are not of this world. Your weapon kills the void spawn with ease. Why did you help me? Because you needed help. Jake lowered his hand slowly. Where am I? What are those things? The woman studied him for a long moment before sheathing her sword. You are on Ithermore. I am Princess Lyra Silverwind. These are the void creatures that consume our world. She gestured at the dissolving remains. They devour matter and magic alike. For 30 years we have fought them. For 30 years, we have only slowed their advance. The dragon moved closer, and Jake felt heat radiating from its scales. Up close, he could see intelligence in those amber eyes. More than animal intelligence. The dragon was studying him just as carefully as the princess. Lyra looked at his crash pod in the distance, and then back at his face. You wish to return home. I can help you, but I need something in return. Jake felt the weight of those words. Nothing was ever free. What do you need? Lyra drew a knife and cut her palm before Jake could react. She spoke words that made the air shimmer and glow. Your weapons can kill what our magic cannot. Help me win my mother's war. Help me save my people. In exchange, I will give you the gateway crystals that can open a path to your world. The glowing symbols wrapped around Jake's arm and sank into his skin. He felt something lock into place deep in his chest. A connection he did not understand but could not break. What did you do? The blood oath of protection. Lyra showed no regret on her face. You are bound to aid me until the war ends. If you try to leave before that, we both die. The magic will consume us. She touched the crystal at her throat again. I am sorry, but I am desperate. My people are dying. You are the first hope we have had in years. Jake looked at the mark on his arm, that now glowed with the same blue light as her sword. He should have been angry, should have felt betrayed. But when he looked into her violet eyes, he saw the same thing he had felt crawling from his crashed ship: desperation, the need to survive. Maybe they were not so different. How long? How long have you been fighting these things? Since I was a child. Lyra turned toward her dragon and placed a hand on its scaled neck. This is Ember. He has been with me since I was 8 years old. Together we have burned 1,000 void nests. It is not enough. It will never be enough unless something changes. The dragon lowered its massive head and exhaled. Warm breath that smelled like cinnamon. Jake reached out slowly and touched the scales. They were hot but not burning, smooth like polished stone. Ember rumbled deep in his chest, and Jake felt that sound in his bones. Then I guess we had better win your war. Jake looked at the plasma cutter in his hand. If these things die to human weapons, then we will make more. Better ones. I am not a soldier, but I am an engineer. I can teach your people. Lyra smiled for the first time, and it transformed her face from warrior to something almost gentle. Come. My mother will want to meet the human who fell from the sky and lived. She will want to meet the human who can kill the UNKILLABL. Jake climbed onto Ember's back behind Lyra. The dragon launched into the air with powerful beats of his wings. As they rose above the silver forest, Jake saw the landscape spread below. Beautiful lands of bluegrass and crystal rivers. But in the distance, he saw the corruption. Black stains spreading across the earth like oil. Dead zones where nothing grew and the ground itself seemed to rot. The war looked worse than Lyra had described. Much worse. Jake tightened his grip as Ember flew toward a massive fortress of white stone that gleamed in the light of the 2 moons. He had come to this world by accident, but now he was bound to its fate. For better or worse, he would see this through to the end. The Moonspire Citadel rose from the mountain like a crown of ice and starlight. Ember landed in a courtyard where soldiers in silver armor stopped their training to stare.
Ow.
Jake climbed down from the dragon and felt 100 eyes watching his every move. Whispers spread through the ranks in that melodic language. Still could not understand without Lyra's translation crystal. Lyra led him through halls carved from white stone that seemed to glow from within. Tapestries showed battles between elves and shadows. Statues of past warriors lined the corridors. Everything spoke of age and tradition and a war that had lasted longer than Jake had been alive. They entered a throne room where a woman sat on a seat made of twisted silver branches. She looked like an older version of Lyra with the same white hair and violet eyes, but her face held lines of exhaustion and grief. She wore a crown of black metal that seemed too heavy for her head. Queen Helena Silverwind regarded Jake with the cold assessment of a predator sizing up potential prey. She spoke, and her voice came through Lyra's crystal harsh and sharp. Human, I have not seen your kind in 300 years. The last ones who came here died badly. Jake met her stare and did not look away. I did not come here by choice. Your daughter saved my life and I saved hers. Now I am bound by her oath. Helena's eyes narrowed. Show me. Lyra stepped forward. Mother, I cast the blood oath. He carries weapons that kill the void spawn permanently. With his help we can end this. The queen rose from her throne and descended the steps. She moved like water, and Jake realized she was far more dangerous than any void creature he had seen. She grabbed his arm and examined the mark Lyra had placed there. Her expression shifted from anger to something that looked like pain. You fool, girl. Do you know what you have done? Helena released his arm and turned away. The last time this oath was cast, it killed both participants. The magic is unstable, ancient. There is a reason we do not use it anymore, but it worked. Lyra's voice held defiance. He is bound to help us, and in return, I will give him the gateway crystals. It is a fair trade. Nothing about this is fair. Helena walked back to her throne, but did not sit. She looked at Jake again. You are a warrior, I am an engineer. But I can fight when needed. Jake kept his voice steady. Your daughter said my weapons work where your magic fails. Let me prove it. Let me train your soldiers. The queen was silent for a long time. Then she nodded once. You'll join the royal guard. You will teach them your methods. If you can help us push back the void, then perhaps the oath will not be for nothing. But understand this, human. If you fail, my daughter dies. She dies because of your failure. I will make certain your death takes. It's a very long time. Jake nodded. Understood. Helena dismissed them with a wave. Lyra led Jake to quarters in the guard barracks. The room was small, but clean, with a window overlooking the training yard. She showed him where supplies were kept and how to access the archives. Rest tonight. Tomorrow, you begin training. Lyra paused at the door. I am sorry for binding you without asking, but I had to take the chance. We are losing this war. Every day more land falls to the void. More people die or flee. You are the first new factor in decades. Jake sat on the bed and looked at his hands. They still shook slightly from adrenaline. How did the last humans die? The ones your mother mentioned. Lyra's face became carefully neutral. That is a story for another time. Rest now. You will need your strength. She left and Jake lay back staring at the stone ceiling. He was trapped on an alien world bound by magic to a princess he had just met. His ship was destroyed. Supplies limited. Everything he knew was gone, and there was no guarantee he would ever see Earth again. But he had felt Ember's warmth and seen Lyra's desperate hope. He had watched those shadow creatures dissolve under plasma fire. Maybe he could make a difference here. Maybe being trapped was not the worst fate. The next morning, Jack met the royal guard. Captain Amy Thornhart stood before him with arms crossed and skepticism clear on her scarred face. She was shorter than most elves, with dark green hair and eyes like chips of jade. 3 parallel scars ran down her left cheek, and her armor bore marks of countless battles. So you are the human who will save us. Amy spoke through a translation crystal of her own. Her voice dripped with doubt. I lost my entire battalion to the void last spring. 200 soldiers burned to ash and shadow. What can one alien with a metal wand teach us that 3 decades of war have not? Jake picked up his plasma cutter and adjusted the settings. This wand, as you call it, cuts through molecular bonds using superheated plasma. It can slice through steel or stone. More importantly, it disrupts the quantum state that void creatures exist in. They cannot reform after this kind of damage. Amy raised an eyebrow. Prove it. Over the next weeks, Jake worked with the guard to create weapons they could use. He taught them basic chemistry to make explosives from materials found on Ithamor. He showed them how to build simple firearms using springs and compressed air to launch projectiles. Nothing as advanced as his technology, but enough to give them an edge. Amy remained skeptical until the first field test. They took a squad to a small void nest on the border. The creatures came boiling out of corrupted ground, and the guards met them with Jake's new weapons. Grenades wrapped in spell matrices that combined human science with elf magic. Crossbows modified to fire iron bolts coated in plasma residue. The void spawn died and stayed dead. No reformation, no escape into shadow. The nest was cleared in half the time a normal operation would take, and they lost no one. Amy found Jake after the battle. Her expression had shifted from skepticism to thoughtful respect. You might actually help us win this. She offered her arm in the warrior's greeting. Teach me everything. Jake spent his days training soldiers and his evenings with Lyra. She taught him to ride Ember, and he learned the dragon was not just intelligent, but dying. The void's corruption spread through the land, poisoned the magic that sustained creatures like Ember. The dragon had perhaps 5 years before the toxins killed him. This knowledge sat heavy in Jake's chest. He pushed the research teams to work faster. to find solutions. At night, he studied the archives and found references to ancient human technology buried in the oldest texts, satellites in orbit that predated the elves' arrival on this world, ruins beneath the surface that spoke of a failed colony. Lyra found him in the archives one night, surrounded by old books and star charts. "You look troubled." Jake showed her the records. "Humans were here before. Hundreds of years before I crashed. They built things, left things. Why did no one tell me?" Lyra sat beside him and looked at the pages. "My mother does not speak of them. It is forbidden history. The old queen had them executed for crimes against the realm. I do not know what they did, but it was bad enough to erase them from our songs and stories." Jake felt cold suspicion creep up his spine. Or maybe they found something your people did not want found? Maybe they learned the truth about the void. Before Lyra could respond, alarms blared through the citadel. Void creatures were attacking the walls. Jake and Lyra ran to the battlements where Amy and her guards fought against a massive wave of shadow spawn. Jake's weapons held them back, but barely. There were too many. Ember dove from the sky and unleashed torrents of flame.
Jake fired his
Plasma cutter until the battery ran dry, then grabbed a spear and fought alongside elf warriors. Lyra's sword blazed as she cut through enemies with grace, born of years of practice. They moved together without planning it. Jake would strike high, and Lyra would sweep low. When he stumbled, she was there to cover him. When she overextended, he pulled her back. The battle lasted hours, but finally the void creatures retreated. The walls held. The city was safe. Jake collapsed against the stone, exhausted and bleeding from a dozen minor cuts. Lyra sat beside him, breathing hard. Amy approached, and her face was grim. The queen watched from her tower. She saw how you two fight together. She saw the oath in action. Jake felt his stomach drop. That is bad. That is very bad. Amy looked up at the distant tower where a figure stood silhouetted against the moons. Because now she knows what the oath really does. Now she knows you and the princess are connected in ways that make you both valuable and dangerous. Queen Helena summoned Jake and Lyra at dawn. They stood before her throne while she paced like a caged predator. Her violet eyes held something between fury and fear. "I know what you did." Helena's voice cut through the silence. "The blood oath is not just a contract. It links your life forces. Makes you fight as one. React as one. I know because I tried to cast it once. 30 years ago when the first human contacted us." Lyra stiffened beside Jake. "You never told me." "There was nothing to tell." Helena stopped pacing. His name was Commander Ryan Clark. He came through a gateway with a team of scientists and soldiers. They offered to help us understand the void, to find a solution. I was young and desperate like you. I tried to bind him with the oath so he would stay and help us. The magic rejected him. He died screaming. Jake felt the mark on his arm burn. Why did it work with me? I do not know. Helena's mask cracked slightly. Perhaps because you came here by accident. Perhaps because Lyra cast it in true desperation rather than political calculation. Perhaps the magic knows things we do not. Regardless, you are now bound. If one dies, the other follows within days. The queen sat heavily on her throne. The other humans in Clark's team tried to understand what happened. They studied the void, discovered things. Then my mother, the old queen, had them executed for treason. She destroyed their research, sealed their bases. I was ordered never to speak of it again. Jake's suspicion crystallized into certainty. They found out the truth. They learned what the void really is. Helena looked at him sharply. What do you mean? Jake pulled out the charts he had copied from the archives. Your people came here from another world. You are not native to Ithermore. The void is not an invasion. It is this planet trying to heal itself, trying to remove what it sees as contamination. Lyra made a small sound of shock. That cannot be true. Helena said nothing, but her silence was confirmation enough. Jake continued. The human technology buried here was not trying to suppress the void. They were trying to create harmony between your civilization and the planet's natural systems. But someone stopped them. Someone who benefited from the war continuing. You accuse my mother of prolonging our suffering. Helena's voice went deadly quiet. I accuse the old queen of not understanding what she had. Jake met her stare. Or being too afraid to try something new. Either way, the answer is not in fighting the void. It is in finding balance. The queen stood abruptly. You will have your chance to prove this theory. There is a void nexus at Ashenvale. The largest concentration we have ever seen. Take your soldiers. Take your weapons. Destroy it, and we will see if your balance theory holds. If you succeed, I will give you the gateway crystals to go home. If you fail, the void will spread here within months, and we all die anyway. This is a suicide mission. Amy appeared in the doorway. The Ashenvale Nexus is defended by thousands of spawn. We would need an army. Then gather an army. Helena waved them away. You have 1 month to prepare? Make it count. The month passed in a blur of preparation. Jake worked with Amy to train 500 soldiers in combined tactics. They built mobile cannons that fired explosive rounds, created armor that blocked void toxins. Lyra spent every day with Ember, practicing aerial strikes that would support the ground assault. Jake also worked in secret with a small team of scientists. They studied the old human technology and found it still active deep underground. A network of quantum stabilizers that had been suppressing the planet's natural defenses for centuries. If those were destroyed, the void would stop attacking. But destroying them would also destroy any chance Jake had of repairing his ship technology. He would be trapped forever. Lyra found him staring at the schematics the night before they marched. You discovered something. Jake explained what he had found. The choice before him: save millions by destroying the technology, or keep his only path home. Lyra took his hand. I will not force you to choose. The oath binds your service, not your conscience. Whatever you decide, I will support you. What would you do? Jake asked. I would save my people. Lyra's voice was steady. But I am not the one who will be trapped here forever. That is your sacrifice to make. The army marched at dawn. 500 soldiers plus Jake's modified vehicles and weapons. Ember flew overhead with Lyra on his back. They reached Ashenvale in 3 days and found the landscape more corrupted than any report suggested. The ground had turned black and crystalline. Strange growths pulsed with toxic light. The air itself felt wrong. The void nexus rose from the center like a wound in reality. A swirling mass of shadow and distorted space that hurt to look at. Around it, thousands of void spawn waited. Amy raised her hand, and the army stopped. This is it. We either end this today, or we die trying. Jake gave the signal, and the assault began. Cannons fired explosive rounds into the spawn masses. Soldiers advanced in formation with their new weapons blazing. Magic and technology combined as spellcasters enhanced the firearms and grenades with elemental power. The spawn died by the hundreds, but more kept coming. Ember dove from above and burned entire sections clear. Lyra's sword glowed bright enough to hurt as she channeled massive amounts of power through it. Jake fought at the front with Amy and her best warriors. They cut a path toward the Nexus step by bloody step. The battle raged for hours. Jake lost track of time and focused only on the next enemy, the next threat. Keep moving. Keep fighting. They were winning, but barely. Then they reached the Nexus, and Jake saw the truth with his own eyes. At the center was not a monster or evil force. It was a node in the planet's defense grid, a quantum processor trying desperately to restore balance. The spawn were antibodies. The corruption was medicine. Amy saw it too. Her face went pale. By the ancestors. We have been fighting the planet itself. Jake pulled out the device he had built in secret, a modified electromagnetic pulse that would destroy the suppressor network. All of it. Every piece of human technology that kept the planet in a weakened state. Once he activated it, there would be no going back. Lyra landed beside him with Ember. She looked at the device and then at his face. You know what you have to do? Jake activated it. The pulse spread across the planet in waves of blue light. Underground, the ancient human technology overloaded and died. The Nexus shuddered and began to collapse. The spawn stopped attacking. The corruption started to recede. Within minutes, the battlefield went silent. The void was withdrawing. Not defeated, but pacified. The planet had what it needed. Amy grabbed Jake's shoulder. "What did you do? How did you stop it?" Jake looked at the remains of his device. "I destroyed our only advantage. The human technology that helped us survive here. It was the same technology keeping the planet sick. Now it can heal. And now you can never go home." Lyra's voice was soft. Jake looked at Ember, who was already breathing easier. At the soldiers who were cheering their survival. At the land that was turning from black to green before his eyes. I made the choice I could live with. He met Lyra's gaze. "I guess I'm staying." They returned to Moonspire Citadel as heroes. The corruption was fading across the kingdom. Void attacks had ceased. For the first time in 30 years, the war was over. Soldiers celebrated in the streets. Children played without fear. Queen Helena should have been pleased. Instead, she had. Jake arrested the moment he entered the throne room. Guards grabbed his arms and locked quantum restraints around his wrists. Lyra shouted in protest, but more guards held her back. Amy reached for her sword, but Helena raised a hand. "Stand down, all of you." The Queen's voice carried absolute authority. "Jake Morrison, you are charged with treason against Ithermore and crimes against humanity itself." Jake did not resist. He had expected something like this. "What are the charges?" "You destroyed the only human technology on this planet." Helena descended from her throne. "You have made it impossible for any future human ships to find us. You have trapped your entire species' potential here with no way to call for help or warn your people. You have made yourself the last human on Ithermore and ensured you will die here. That was the point." Jake kept his voice level. "The technology was killing this world. Removing it saved millions of lives. It also proved something I feared." Helena stopped in front of him. "You can adapt. You can lead. My soldiers follow you more readily than they follow me. My daughter trusts you more than she trusts her own mother. In 1 month, you accomplished what we could not in 30 years. You are dangerous not because you are evil, but because you are better at being what my people need than I am." Lyra broke free from the guards and stood between them. "Mother, you cannot do this. He saved us. He saved everyone. Which is exactly why I must act now." Helena's face was stone. "I offer you a choice, Jake Morrison. Stay here. Marry my daughter. Become Prince Consort and help me rule. Your tactical genius with her magical power would make you the perfect leaders when I step down. You would have wealth and honor and the love of a kingdom, or Jake already knew what came next, or you refuse and spend the rest of your life in the crystal dungeons." Helena gestured to the guards. "Comfortable enough to keep you alive. Miserable enough to never be free. And because of the blood oath, your imprisonment slowly kills you both over years. Lyra wastes away in her tower while you rot in your cell. The magic drains you both until nothing remains. There is a third option." Lyra's voice shook with anger. "You could let him go. Free him from his service. Give him the life he chooses. If I break the oath, you both die instantly." Helena turned to her daughter. "If he tries to flee, you both die. If either of you dies, the other follows within days. There is no easy escape. There never was. The blood oath is a trap, and you walked into it willingly." Jake felt the weight of the choice crushing down. Marry Lyra and give up any hope of freedom. Stay in prison and slowly kill them both. Or force a separation and die immediately. All paths led to the same place. He was trapped. The Queen had him taken to the dungeons deep beneath the citadel. The cell was carved from crystal that glowed with soft light. Large enough to move around, furnished with basic comfort. But the door sealed with magic he could not break, and guards stood watch day and night. Lyra came to visit him every day. She brought food and books and news of the outside world. They talked through the crystal barrier, and Jake learned more about her than all their time fighting together had revealed. She loved music and mathematics. Spent hours studying the stars. dreamed of a world where elves and dragons could live without fear. Ember could not fit in the dungeon, but sometimes Jake felt the dragon's presence. A warmth in his chest that said the bond between them was real, even through stone and distance. Amy visited too. She had been working on something in secret, a way to contact Earth without the old technology. She spread plans across the floor and explained in whispers quantum communication. Amy pointed at complex diagrams. If we can build this, we can send a message across space instantly. Let Earth know you are alive, that there is a world here worth protecting, not Kalongjing. How long? Jake studied the plans. Decades. Maybe longer. We do not have all the materials. Helena will not provide resources for this project, but if you give me time, I can do it. Jake looked at Amy's scarred face and saw the same. Determination that had made her a good soldier. Do it. Even if I never leave, I want Earth to know what happened here. I want them to learn from our mistakes. 6 months passed. Jake adjusted to the rhythm of imprisonment. Read books in a dozen languages. Learned elf history and philosophy. Became friends with some of his guards who were curious about human culture. It was not freedom, but it was not unbearable either. Lyra's visits kept him sane. They played strategy games with pieces carved from crystal, debated ethics, and explored ideas that had no answers. Jake found himself looking forward to her arrival each day. The way she laughed at his jokes. How her eyes lit up when she explained some new discovery. Ember was growing stronger. The dragon's connection through the blood oath meant Jake could sometimes see through his eyes, feel what he felt, fly without moving. It was strange and wonderful and made the cell feel less like a cage. Helena visited exactly once. She sat across from Jake in his cell and studied him in silence for a long time. I loved Commander Clark. The Queen's admission came quietly. We spent months working together before I cast the oath. I thought I could keep him here through magic, and he would eventually love me back. Instead, I killed him, and that guilt has haunted me for 30 years. Jake said nothing. Let her speak. When I see you with my daughter, I see myself in Clark. The same bond forming, the same inevitable tragedy. So I locked you away not because I think you are evil, but because I am afraid. Helena stood to leave. Afraid that history will repeat. Afraid that I will lose Lyra the way I lost him. Afraid that your presence will destroy everything I have tried to protect. Fear is not a good reason to cage people. Jake met her eyes. And I am not Commander Clark. I chose to stay. Chose to help. Chose to sacrifice my way home for your people. That should count for something. Helena paused at the door. Perhaps it does. We will see. She left, and Jake sat in the glowing crystal cell, wondering what came next. The war was over, but a different kind of battle had just begun. One fought with politics and emotion instead of weapons and magic. He had no idea how to win this one. Lyra arrived that evening with news. Her mother was abdicating. After 30 years of rule, Helena was stepping down, but not to let Lyra take the throne. Instead, she was creating a council of elders to govern, making Ithamor into something like a democracy, and in her last act as queen, she will decide your fate. Lyra pressed her hand against the crystal barrier. She can either pardon you or ensure you never leave this palace. The council will honor her final decree. Jake placed his hand opposite hers. What do you want? I want you to be free. Lyra's voice cracked. I want to undo the oath and let you live your own life. But I do not know how. Then we figure it out together. Jake smiled despite everything. We have time. We have each other through this bond. We will find an answer. Outside the crystal walls, Ithamor was healing. Inside, Jake waited to see if he would be part of that future, or remain a ghost locked away from the life happening beyond his reach. The answer would come soon. Helena's final judgment approached like a storm he could not avoid. The coronation day arrived with clear skies and celebration throughout the kingdom. Not a coronation actually, but an inauguration. The Council of Elders would take power and Helena would step down from her throne forever. The ceremony drew thousands to the Citadel grounds. Jake watched from his crystal cell, as guards prepared him for the event. They dressed him in formal clothing and bound his hands with ceremonial chains. He was to stand before the court as Helena made her final decisions as queen. His fate would be announced publicly along with the transition of power. Lyra came to walk with him. She wore silver robes that flowed like water and a crown of crystal flowers. She looked beautiful and terrified in equal measure. "Whatever happens today, I want you to know something." Lyra spoke quietly as guards escorted them through the halls. "The months we spent together these past years have been the best of my life. Not the battles or the victory, just talking with you, learning from you. Never expected to find someone who understood me so completely." Jake wanted to reach for her hand, but the chains prevented it. "I feel the same way. This bond between us might have started as magic, but it became something real." They entered the throne room where thousands had gathered. The Council of Elders sat in a semicircle. Amy stood with the royal guard at attention. Ember perched on a balcony above with other dragons that had come from across the kingdom. All eyes turned to watch Jake and Lyra approach the throne. Queen Helena sat one last time in the seat she had held for 30 years. She looked smaller somehow, less fierce. The crown on her head caught the light and cast rainbow patterns across her face. "Jake Morrison." Helena's voice filled the vast room. "You stand accused of treason and crimes against your own people. You destroyed technology that could have benefited both our species. You trapped yourself here with no way to call for rescue or reinforcement. How do you answer these charges?" "I destroyed a poison that was killing this world." Jake spoke clearly for all to hear. "I chose to save lives over my own freedom. I would make the same choice again." The queen nodded slowly. "And what of your bond with my daughter? The blood oath that ties your fates together. Do you regret it?" "No." Jake looked at Lyra. "I regret that she felt desperate enough to cast it without asking. But I do not regret helping her. Helping all of you." Helena rose from her throne. She walked down the steps and stood before Jake and Lyra. "For 30 years, I have ruled through fear and duty. I made decisions based on protecting what we had, rather than reaching for what we could become. I see now that was wrong." The queen turned to address the crowd. "Commander Clark and his team died because I was afraid of change, afraid of what humans represented. They offered knowledge and partnership, and I responded with suspicion. My mother responded with violence. We have been ruled by fear for too long." Lena removed her crown and handed it to the eldest council member. "As my final act as queen, I make this decree. Jake Morrison is pardoned of all charges. He will be named Ethermore's ambassador to humanity. He will have the resources and freedom to contact his people and establish proper relations between our worlds." Shocked murmurs spread through the crowd. Lyra grabbed Jake's arm. "There is one condition." Helena looked at Jake directly. "You must convince Earth that Ethermore is off-limits to colonization. You must make them understand that we welcome partnership, but will defend ourselves against conquest. If you fail in this, I will personally destroy every quantum beacon in the system. Make it impossible for humans to ever find us again." Jake meant it. "I will show them what we've built here together. Prove that cooperation is better than conquest." The queen nodded. "Then I release you from imprisonment." The chains fell from Jake's wrists at her gesture. "But the blood oath remains. Only you and Lyra can decide what to do about that." Lyra stepped forward. "Mother, there must be a way to break it safely." "There is." Helena pulled out an ancient book. "I spent these 6 months researching. The oath can be transferred, split between multiple recipients. If you transfer half to Ember, the bond becomes flexible. Jake would still be connected but able to travel. As long as the dragon lives, he has freedom." Ember roared from his perch and spread his wings. The dragon seemed pleased with this plan. The ceremony to transfer the oath took place that evening. Magic swirled around Jake and Lyra and Ember as ancient words reshaped the bond between them. Jake felt the connection shift. Instead of a chain, it became something like a compass. He would always know where they were, always feel their presence. But he could move, could travel, could return to them when ready. Amy found Jake after the ceremony. She brought news that her team had completed the quantum communicator. It was crude and limited but functional. They could send a message to Earth. What will you tell them? Amy handed him the communication device. Jake thought for a long moment, then he began recording. This is Captain Jake Morrison. I survived the wormhole accident and made contact with an advanced civilization. They call themselves the Elves of Ethermore. For 30 years they fought a war one helped them end. Not through conquest, but through understanding, he continued. Earth should know this world exists, but it must be approached with respect, not exploitation. The elves are technologically different, but not inferior. They have magic where we have science. They have wisdom we lack. Any attempt to colonize or control them will be met with force. I will remain here as ambassador to ensure peaceful contact. Jake paused. And to anyone listening, I am not a prisoner. I am exactly where I choose to be. He sent the message into space. It would take time to reach Earth, years maybe. But it would arrive and humanity would know what happened. They would know Jake's choice. 3 weeks later, a human fleet appeared at the edge of Ethermore's system. Massive warships bristling with weapons. Admiral Kate Lawson commanded the fleet, and her first message demanded Jake's immediate return. Jake suited up in a rebuilt shuttle with Lyra and Ember beside him. They flew out to meet the fleet. The shuttle was small and fragile compared to the warships, but Jake was not afraid. He'd faced worse. The Admiral allowed him to dock. He walked into her command center with Lyra and faced a woman who looked like she had not slept in months. Her gray hair was pulled back severely, and her eyes held the hardness of someone who had seen too much combat. Captain Morrison, Admiral Lawson, did not offer any greeting. You were declared dead 3 years ago, yet here you stand with aliens. Explain yourself. Jake explained everything. The crash, the war, the blood oath. The choice he made to destroy the old technology. Lyra stood beside him and added details about elf culture and history. Together they painted a picture of two civilizations that could benefit each other without one dominating the other. Admiral Lawson listened in silence. When they finished, she pulled up data on her screens. We detected the quantum pulse you triggered, analyzed the dead satellites. Our scientists believe you prevented an ecological catastrophe that would have destroyed all life on that planet, including any human presence. That is correct. Jake met her stare. The old colony tried to terraform Ethermore without understanding what they were doing. They almost killed everything. The elves learned to coexist naturally. Should learn from them, not repeat past mistakes. The Admiral studied them both. What do you propose? A treaty. Lyra spoke up. We will share our knowledge of quantum manipulation and magical sciences. You will share your technology and help us expand our defenses. We will establish embassies and cultural exchange. But there will be no military occupation, no resource extraction without fair trade, no interference in our governance. Admiral Lawson was quiet for a long time. She pulled up images of Earth, the overcrowded cities, the resource wars, the environmental collapse. We need what you are offering, but I cannot make this decision alone. This goes to the United Earth Council. Then let us speak to them. Jake gestured to the communication array. Set up the meeting, we will convince them together. The negotiations took months. Jake and Lyra traveled to Earth and stood before the council. They brought Ember, who amazed the crowds. They shared recordings of the war and the peace that followed. They demonstrated combined technology and magic in ways that made scientists speechless. In the end, the council agreed to the treaty. Ethermore would remain independent. Trade and cultural exchange would be established. No colonization, no exploitation, just two civilizations learning from each other. Jake returned to Ethermore with the signed treaty and found Helena waiting. The former queen had taken up teaching at the academy, training young elves in combined tactics. She looked lighter somehow without the crown's weight. You did it? Helena actually smiled, convinced them to see us as equals. Clark would have been proud. He tried to do the same thing. Jake understood now. Your mother killed him before he could succeed. Yes, Helena's smile faded. We have made the same mistakes over and over. Perhaps with you here, we can finally break that cycle. Lyra found Jake standing on the battlements that night. The stars above were no longer quite so alien. He knew which one was soul, which direction led home. But home felt less important than it once had. You could go back. Lyra leaned against the stone beside him. The oath would not stop you. Ember can fly between worlds now. You could visit Earth whenever you want.